regardless what the reason is, the government funds are continuously being added, they're continuously being revised, and it's important to be up to date on them. And most of the information on government funding is usually free, and there are a lot of places to search them. We'll take a look momentarily what those places are, but that's a snapshot of government funding. Again, there are opportunities, there are limitless opportunities for government funding, and it's important to stay up to date on those opportunities simply because they can change on a daily basis. They can change. There are a lot of factors that cause them to be changed. There are a lot of factors that cause them to be revised, and those factors cause them to be revised and changed pretty frequently. So it's important to stay up to date on them, and most of the information on those funds are available for free, and there are a lot of places to search for them. The resources for finding federal grants would be the National Institute of Health offices. You see, the link is right there. There's the National Science Foundation. Their website lists an awful lot of grant opportunities. Other individual government agencies, there's the Housing Agency, there's the Small Business Administration, there's HUD, there's SBA, there's the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, there's the Department of Health, Department of there's you know, the amount, the way the government is set up with these funds, at least here in America, is that the funds are typically allocated to specific departments, that oversee certain aspects of American social and economic, let's just say, well-being, and the funds are distributed through them to split. They split the funding up that they receive, and then they'll go and set up some grants and whatnot, and then those grants will be available typically on their websites. And then probably the biggest resource for government funding would be grants.gov. That's basically a collection of information from all the government agencies, and that's very valuable portal for funding and for applying. These would be resources for locating federal grants. Again, that's the NIH office, that's the NSF department, that's the in general individual agencies, and then grants.gov. As far as resources for private associations or foundations, so there's a foundation center. Foundation Center basically has a list of just about every private association, every association, every private foundation that may exist. That'd be relevant. It's primarily a U.S. based resource, but they'll have just about every available grant opportunity. Again, you can search, on Foundation Center's website. You can search by topic. You can search by geographic region. You can search it. There are a lot of different search criteria to narrow down the results to more accurately reflect what might actually be available. In addition, when trying to zero in on the actual grant, what they may fund and whatnot, and you'd want to look at the 990 filings. The Foundation Center has very valuable resources for going through 990 filings as well. The GrantsNet, also a very valuable resource, and then there are a lot of others out there. There's GuideStar. There are a lot of other very valuable resources there for locating foundation-based grants and association-based grants. And then finally, there are subscription databases. typically these would cost, but you basically subscribe based on your interest. And then whenever a grant is available, again, you can do this on the Foundation Center and a lot of other funding resources as well. But there would be the Community of Science, there would be InfoEd, and then there are others as well. So these are some of the more popular resources that are used to locate grants that may be available. Again, these are resources for federal grants. These are resources for private associations and foundations. And then these are, and then in addition, there are subscription databases. As far as corporate foundations, so most of these will be listed on Foundation Center or GuideStar or GrantStat or whatever it is. Most of them would be listed there, but in addition, there are the corporate websites typically would include a link to their nonprofit arm. Usually with these resources, you'll be able to find just about everything that might be out there. Now, let's take a look at applying for the grants. Once we've done our research, once we've scoured the internet, once we've scoured all our available resources for possible grants, how do we go about applying for those grants? What's involved? So, step one, we need to ask ourselves, what's the need for this project? Why are we doing it? Why are we doing this project? Is it because our either patrons or our users or visitors asked us for it? Does our strategic plan call for it? Do we have some sort of preservation plan that calls for it? Do we have any statistics that show that it's actually needed? As far as rationale is concerned, are there standards that we need to meet that might just provide some sort of rationale for the project? Are there any other reasons why we need to do this project? Again, these are questions we want to ask ourselves to make sure that we know exactly why we're doing this project. Do we have, is there actually a need? Do we have statistics that say there's a need? Is our agency in jeopardy just because this is part of our long-term strategic plan? We need to know why we're doing it. Next, we need a work plan and a timetable. What specifically are we going to be doing? If it's appropriate, the best would be to have a step-by-step outline of what we'll be doing. When are we going to be doing each step? Is there enough time allotted for each task that might be required? From a time perspective, is it feasible? For example, if we're doing a cataloging project, so how many objects can we realistically get cataloged in an hour or in a day? If we realize that we can only do X amount, we don't want to set up a project that the deadlines would require doing 5 times X amount. Is it feasible from a time perspective? Is there time? Have we allotted time to evaluate the project? For example, how long would it take us to measure our outcomes? So we want a specific work plan, a step-by-step work plan which would include all the tasks that are involved. And we want to know if the project, we'll have a time frame for the project, and we want to know if if the project if the time that we've allotted to that project is enough to actually get the project done. What are our capabilities? What can we say we'll be doing? Now, it's important to realize that there might be various levels at whatever foundation we may be in talks with. There might be a lot of different levels of approval there, and even for small grants. And it's important to take this into consideration for the project start date. The best would be to first estimate the accurate, most likely start date, and then add another month. Well, the reason is because the letters that inform us that we've actually received the grant, although it's possible they'll go out a day or two after we meet, typically it'll be at least a month after that before we actually get the funds. And if we have a hard time putting together the paperwork, it could be even longer. So to apply for a grant on January 1st, and the work plan calls for starting the grant on January 1st. The work plan calls for starting the project on January 1st. That's not feasible. Because it can take at least a month until the funds actually get into our bank accounts. So we need to make sure we're realistic about the time for starting the project from a financial perspective as well. So we want to make sure we keep the time frame just from is the time allotted to the work plan feasible. We want to make sure we keep a time frame of the financing. Is the time that we've allotted to finance this project feasible to get the project done? Next, we want to know the project personnel. Who's going to be working on the project? Is it regular staff? Are they full-time? Are they part-time? We need to make sure that we put that in the grant application. That information is important for a couple of reasons. The funders would want to see that information for a couple of reasons, but it's also crucial, specifically when, and we'll take a look at this. We'll take a look at this a little in just a bit. But it's also crucial when the grant requires a match, a fund match. Now, a lot of times that fund match doesn't necessarily have to be cash, but it can be in kind. And the staff's salary can be considered an in-kind match. But there are a lot of other reasons why funders would want to know if they're full-time or part-time. Are we going to have volunteers for the project?